My fiancé shouted, "Married couples don't need space from each other," as I mentioned wanting a simple home office. I said, "Got it," backed off, stayed calm, and let her think she'd won, because a late-night call from someone she trusts would soon expose why she. So I finally figured out what I was doing wrong in my relationship, and honestly, it took almost losing myself completely to see it clearly. I'm Cade, 28M, software developer in Denver, and I've been engaged to Valencia, 26F, for about 18 months. Wedding's supposed to be in 4 months, and up until 3 weeks ago everything seemed perfect on paper. We'd found our rhythm, talked about our future, started house hunting, the whole package that makes everyone around you think you've got life figured out. But this one conversation changed everything, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around how we got here. Valencia's an event planner, really good at what she does, and we've been living separately but spending most nights together. I work remote, which has been great for our relationship because I can be flexible with my schedule, but I've been working from her kitchen table whenever I'm at her place, which is most of the time, and it's been getting harder to concentrate during client calls with her shows playing in the background, or when she's on calls with vendors. When we started seriously looking at houses, I brought up something I thought was completely reasonable. I'd love to have a dedicated office space. Nothing crazy, just converting one of the spare bedrooms so I could actually have a door to close during meetings instead of hiding in the bathroom when things get loud. Her reaction caught me completely off guard. She started crying, like full breakdown crying, asking if I was already trying to get away from her before we were even married, whether I was having second thoughts about our relationship. I was sitting there thinking, what the hell just happened? I tried explaining that having a proper workspace would actually help our relationship. I'd be less stressed about work interruptions, more present when we were together, better at separating work time from us time, but she kept saying things like, married couples shouldn't need separate spaces, and, my parents have been together 30 years, and they never needed an office to be happy. Here's the thing that's really messing with my head. I'd mentioned wanting a home office before, early in our relationship, and she seemed totally fine with it then. We even joked about how I could have my nerd cave, and she could have her craft room. But now, suddenly, it's this massive red flag that means I don't want to be close to her. What really escalated things was how she made it about our families. Next thing I know, I'm getting calls from my mom asking why I'm making unreasonable demands right before the wedding. Valencia's parents want to have a sit-down discussion about expectations in marriage. I started wondering if I was losing my mind for thinking that wanting a place to work was normal. The past week has been brutal. Cold shoulders, tense conversations, family pressure from both sides. I've offered to compromise. Maybe we set up the office in the basement, or I could just use a corner of the living room with a folding screen. But every solution I suggest gets shot down because apparently the problem isn't where I work, it's that I want to work somewhere she isn't. I'm supposed to marry this woman in 4 months, and we're having a relationship crisis over a room with a desk in it. Something about that feels really, really wrong. But I can't tell if I'm being unreasonable or if this is revealing something bigger. Has anyone else dealt with this kind of thing? Am I crazy for thinking this shouldn't be such a big deal? Update 1. It's been about a week since my original post, and I'm honestly more confused than when I started. I thought I was dealing with a simple disagreement about house layout. Turns out I was dealing with something much bigger. After reading your comments and getting some perspective, I decided to do what I thought was the mature thing. I told Valencia to forget about the office. We'd figure out something else. Maybe I'd rent a co-working space or just deal with the kitchen table situation. I thought she'd be relieved that I was prioritizing our relationship over my work setup. Instead of being happy, she got even more upset. She said if I was willing to give up on it so easily, then clearly it wasn't that important to me in the first place, and she was hurt that I'd made such a big deal about something I didn't actually care about. I'm sitting there thinking, wait, what? I thought I was showing her that she mattered more to me than having an office, but apparently now I was being dishonest about my priorities. That's when she started bringing up other stuff, things that had apparently been bothering her for months that she'd never mentioned. How I spend too much time on work calls. How I'm not emotionally available enough during the day. How she feels like I prioritize my career over our relationship. Stuff that honestly blindsided me because in 18 months together, none of this had ever come up. We tried to have dinner to work through it all, but she was so different, cold in a way I'd never seen before. When I asked if we could just talk honestly about what was actually bothering her, she said I was being dismissive of her feelings, and walked out mid-conversation. I've been replaying that dinner over and over, and here's what I can't shake. This isn't about an office anymore. This isn't even about work-life balance. This is about control. The moment I asked for something that meant I wouldn't be available to her 24/7, she saw it as a threat to our relationship. The thing that really gets me is how quickly it escalated. One conversation about workspace turned into a complete evaluation of our compatibility. If we can't handle a discussion about house layout without it becoming a relationship crisis, what happens when we face actual challenges as a married couple? My buddy Stellan thinks I'm finally seeing red flags that have been there all along. He reminded me of stuff from the past year, how Valencia gets weird when I have guys' nights, how she always wants to know exactly what I'm doing when we're not together, how she'll get quiet and distant if I mention grabbing drinks with coworkers after particularly stressful days. I told him those things felt normal to me, just her wanting to be close. But now I'm wondering if what I interpreted as caring was actually something else entirely. The worst part is how isolated this whole thing has made me feel. I can't talk to my family about it because they're Team Valencia now, convinced I'm being difficult right before our wedding. Her friends obviously think I'm the problem. I'm starting to feel like I'm the only one who thinks requesting basic workspace shouldn't end an engagement. I don't know what happens next. She's giving me the silent treatment, and honestly, after a week of trying to fix something I'm not even sure I broke, I'm exhausted. Anyone else feel like they're losing their mind when their partner makes reasonable requests feel unreasonable? Because that's where I'm at right now. Update 2. This is probably going to be my last update because honestly, I don't think there's a relationship left to update about. 3 days after the dinner disaster, I'm dead asleep, and my phone starts going off. It's 3:17 a.m. and Valencia's calling, absolutely drunk and sobbing. I pick up thinking maybe something happened to her. Someone got hurt. Emergency situation. Instead, she's telling me she can't marry someone who's already planning to separate from her. She's going on about how the office thing proved that we're fundamentally incompatible, how marriage is supposed to be about being a team, not having individual needs that don't include your partner. I tried to talk her down, tried to explain one more time that having workspace doesn't mean I want to get away from her. But she just kept saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't marry someone who sees me as an obstacle to their happiness. Then she hung up. Just like that. Radio silence. I tried calling back, straight to voicemail, texted her, no response. Called her friends to make sure she was safe. They said she was taking some space to think. Even reached out to her parents, who said they wanted to let us work it out ourselves, which was pretty rich considering how involved they'd been when they thought I was being unreasonable. For 3 days, I had no idea where my fiancée was or if she was okay. I'm supposed to be marrying this person, and she could just disappear without a word after making a unilateral decision about our entire future. I'm not going to lie. Those 3 days broke something in me. I kept thinking about that phone call, how easily she could just decide we were over without any real conversation. What happens when we have our first real problem as a married couple? Does she just bail whenever I need something she doesn't understand? I started thinking about our whole relationship differently. All those times she got quiet when I had plans that didn't include her. How she always wanted to know exactly what I was doing, who I was with, what we talked about. How she'd get upset if I was too tired for conversation after long work days. I'd always thought it was sweet that she wanted to be so connected. Now I'm wondering if it was something else entirely. My friend Stellan came over the second night and found me basically catatonic on my couch, staring at my phone waiting for some sign she was alive. He sat me down and said something that I can't get out of my head. Dude, healthy people don't disappear when they're upset. They communicate. He was right. In 18 months together, Valencia had never once had a difficult conversation with me about anything that was bothering her. She'd just get distant and cold until I figured out what was wrong and fixed it. I'd always thought I was being a good partner by learning to read her moods and adjust accordingly. But really, I was just enabling her to avoid any kind of direct communication about problems. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just dealing with someone who didn't want me to have an office. I was dealing with someone who couldn't handle the idea that I might have needs that didn't revolve around her. And when I tried to advocate for myself, Her solution was to end the relationship rather than figure out how to work together. The engagement was already over. I just hadn't accepted it yet. When she finally called on day 4 wanting to talk, I was done waiting for someone who'd rather run away than deal with conflict. Some things you can't come back from, and abandoning your partner when they need you most is one of them. Final update: a week after the disappearing act, Valencia finally called wanting to meet up. She suggested coffee at our usual place, acting like nothing catastrophic had happened between us. When I got there, she was already sitting in our regular booth, looking put together in that way she does when she's trying to control a situation. She started talking immediately about how stressful the past few days had been for both of us, how wedding planning pressure was getting to everyone, how we should just forget about the whole office thing and move forward. That's when it really clicked for me. Stressful for both of us? She made a unilateral decision to end our engagement, disappeared for a week, and now she's talking like we both went through some natural disaster together. Like her choices were just something that happened to us instead of something she actively did. She had a whole plan for how we'd reset, postpone the wedding a few months, do couples counseling, maybe take a vacation together to reconnect. She'd clearly spent the week thinking about how to manage this situation, not reflecting on what caused it in the first place. When I didn't immediately jump on board with her recovery plan, she started getting that familiar edge in her voice. Are you going to hold this against me forever? Everyone makes mistakes when they're stressed. That's when I realized I'd been looking at this whole thing wrong. This wasn't about compromise or finding middle ground. This wasn't about the office or work-life balance or communication styles. This was about how she handles conflict when things get hard. This was about what happens when I have needs that don't align perfectly with hers. I gave her back the ring right there in the coffee shop. She was genuinely shocked. Started talking about everything we'd built together, all the plans we'd made, how I was throwing away our whole future over one bad week. But I wasn't throwing it away. I was protecting myself from a lifetime of walking on eggshells every time I needed something she didn't understand. This isn't about the office, I told her. This is about what happened when I asked for something reasonable. You made it a relationship crisis, involved both our families, then disappeared for a week, rather than have an adult conversation about it. If we can't handle a discussion about workspace, how are we supposed to handle real problems? She kept asking what she could do to fix it, but that was the problem. She still thought this was something to be fixed rather than something fundamental about how we approach conflict. The right person doesn't make your basic needs feel like relationship threats. The right person doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. The aftermath has been brutal. Wedding venues to cancel, deposits to lose, family members asking questions I don't have easy answers for. Valencia's been telling people that I changed my mind about marriage, rather than explaining what actually happened, which honestly just confirms that I made the right choice. But every morning when I wake up and don't have to worry about whether wanting basic workspace makes me a bad partner, I know I dodged something huge. Every time I take a work call without strategizing about noise levels or background interruptions, I remember what it feels like to have your needs be normal instead of problematic. My buddy Stellan told me something that stuck with me. The right person doesn't make your reasonable requests feel unreasonable. He's absolutely right. The right person wants you to have what you need to be successful and happy. They don't see your independence as competition for their attention. I'm not bitter about Valencia. I think she genuinely believed that love meant never wanting space from each other, that needing individual workspace was somehow a rejection of our partnership. But she taught me something crucial about myself. I need to be with someone who sees my autonomy as something that makes me a better partner, not something that threatens our connection. I've been doing a lot of thinking about why I stayed in that dynamic for as long as I did. Part of it was genuine love. Valencia had qualities I really valued, and when things were good between us, they were really good. But part of it was also this belief that if I could just find the right way to explain my needs, the right compromise to offer, she'd eventually understand. What I learned is that understanding isn't the issue. Valencia understood exactly what I was asking for. She just couldn't handle the idea that I might need something that didn't include her. That's not a communication problem. That's a fundamental incompatibility about what relationships should look like. I'm back to living alone in my one-bedroom apartment, and I've never appreciated having my own space more. I converted the second bedroom into the office I always wanted. And it's exactly what I needed. A place where I can take calls without coordination, focus without negotiation, just exist as an individual instead of half of a unit. Started therapy a few weeks ago, partly to process the engagement ending, partly to understand why I spent so long trying to convince someone that my basic needs were reasonable. Learning a lot about attachment styles and boundaries, about the difference between compromise and self-erasure. Dating isn't even on my radar right now. I'm focused on rebuilding friendships I'd neglected, getting back into hobbies that Valencia never showed interest in, remembering who I was before I started measuring my worth by whether I could make someone else comfortable with my independence. The wedding would have been next month. Instead, I'll be taking the vacation I'd planned for our honeymoon. Solo trip to Iceland, just me and a camera and all the space I need to think. Can't wait. For anyone dealing with something similar, if someone makes you feel like your reasonable needs are relationship problems, that's not love asking you to sacrifice. That's control asking you to disappear. The right person will want you to have what makes you whole, not demand that you become less, so they can feel secure. I'm still figuring out what healthy relationships look like, but I know they don't require you to apologize for taking up space in your own life. That seems like a good place to start. Thanks to everyone who helped me see this clearly when I was too deep in it to trust my own perspective. Sometimes you need strangers on the internet to remind you that wanting basic autonomy doesn't make you a bad partner. Edit. Getting a lot of DMs asking about the Iceland trip. Leaving in 2 weeks. And yes, I'm genuinely excited about it. First time traveling completely solo in years. Edit 2. To everyone asking if Valencia and I might work things out, no. Some things reveal fundamental incompatibilities that can't be fixed with better communication. This was one of them.